right, so we are live. People joining and trickling in here, and we will get going soon because we have a really jam-packed session. I cannot wait for all of you to learn and hear from Rachel. I just love what she does. I think it's so powerful and it's simple yet brilliant. So you're all going to learn a ton about how she works with leaders of really small but hyper efficient and super effective organizations. And I think there's tons of lessons in that for people at small nonprofits and at larger ones, because we all know we have a ton on our plates, and these systems that she's going to walk us through are really powerful. I will be taking notes for sure, and I'm excited for y'all to learn. Just a quick reminder, you're here on Pond right now. We host a ton of content and conversations like this completely for free. So if you're enjoying it, please be sure to share with your peers, your teammates, your networks. This whole week, all of our sessions are gearing up for Camp Impact. It's a 4-week series we're hosting starting next week on core nonprofit topics like volunteering and storytelling and fundraising events and grants. And we're taking a really unique approach where we're going to do a 90-minute session on each topic, really efficient, a 30-minute opening workshop on achieving more equity within that domain of nonprofit work, and then a 60-minute showcase of 5 nonprofit leaders talking about how they tackled their biggest challenges around that topic. So again, completely free for anyone that's on Pond. Anyone can join. Takes about 30 seconds to sign up. So please share that with your networks. Make sure to check out Camp Impact and make sure you're registered for those upcoming sessions. Now I'm going to stop talking for basically the next 45 minutes and hand it over to Rachel. And I would love, Rachel, before we get into your presentation, if you don't mind sharing just a little bit about you and your work, like how you came to this, this focus area of yours, and any other layers of your identity that are important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello. It is so fun to be here with you at Pond and Mitch, and it's amazing. So if we haven't met, hello. I am Rachel Beerbauer. I am a former founder and executive director. I've also been an event coordinator. I've been social media marketing. I've been a marketing director. I've been a development director. I've organized the office closet. I have fixed the copier. Like, I've done it all. I've worn the hats, probably much like all of you. When let's see, a couple of years ago, after, really just, to be very honest, I was completely burned out from my organization. I loved it. It's still something that is so important to me. I was like, this whole like executive director nonprofit thing is really freaking hard, but I don't think it should be. Like, I think there's resources out there, and I don't know why nobody is talking about them. And while I was in ED, I really tried to maximize my time, figure out how to scale, and just create these systems and processes that allowed me to be more than one person. Because when we're in these small shops, we are wearing these multiple hats, and we have to be able to do lots of different things all at the same time. And so I created the Productive Executive Director, which is, I thought it was going to be a course. It is a course, it is a program, but it's a community, because oftentimes we feel just so isolated in our roles, and it's just an opportunity to share information, share resources, and learn how to find more time. At the end of the day, that's what this conversation is about. We're calling it prioritizing, mastering prioritization, but it's about time. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for more time. And so that is my goal today, is to help you find more time, to be more efficient with your time, and value your time. So I hang out on Instagram. I didn't actually make a slide with all the information. So later on, we can talk about where to find me, but I hang out on Instagram and on LinkedIn, and I'm on all the places, but I'll share some cool resources for you as well. But yeah, should we dig in?
Yes, I was just gonna like double down on that, understanding how to value your own time. I think all of us, do a bad job, could do a better job of that, where we miscalculate value and that exchange with our time and what we're spending it on. So I'm holding that front and center as we get going. So please kick it off.
All right, let's do this. Okay, so prioritization. One thing, okay, so we talked about the time, but something that I want you to remember is that, where'd it go? Prioritization is actually a small piece of a bigger puzzle, okay? So what you're looking for is productivity and that prioritization. So as you jump into Camp Impact, you are going to be, let's see, okay, you're in the chat saying, I want to make sure that like people can see everything. So yes. Okay, I'll not pay attention
I'll
to
man
it.
The chat here. And everyone that's here, feel free to jump in and help raise them to Rachel as she's going.
Absolutely. I want you to ask questions through this. I'm going to go through it pretty quickly because I'd rather have a conversation about it, but there are a few pieces that that I do want you to think about. So your path to productivity. Productivity allows you to have more time. Okay, so there are 4 elements: plan, prioritize, time block, and evaluate. Okay, so, oh geez, just skip right ahead here. That prioritization, that's a piece of it, but it's not the whole piece. The first thing that you need to do is we need to jump into our plan. Okay, so as you are thinking about Camp Impact, you are coming to the table asking yourself, okay, maybe I need a new volunteer management system. Maybe I need to, jump up to the next level with my CRM. You're asking yourself a lot of different questions, but what I want you to ask yourself is, what is the biggest problem that I'm trying to solve? And so I love this quote: if you don't know where you're going, you might end up somewhere else. Obviously. But in a small organization, we have to know where we're going. In a big organization, we have to know where we're going, or we're wasting our time, or we're duplicating efforts, or it's not going to be as effective as we were hoping it would be. But if we take a step back, something that I have noticed with small and large organizations is we are trying to do too much, way too much. So here are 3 things that I want you to get really good at. And this oftentimes means some tough conversations and getting rid of some stuff. We're going to talk about quality over quantity. Okay, so you got to get really clear on what you do. Specifically, what do you do? If you are serving multiple populations, if you have multiple programs, like what is the through line of what you do? Okay, I have, like, on my podcast, on my blog, you can find impact statement, like how to create an impact statement. That's a really great exercise to get very, very clear. Specifically, what do you do? And I want to hear nothing about providing hope, nothing about providing love, which, good stuff. But specifically, how do you do that? Do you provide books to children so they can learn? Is that how you're providing the hope? Is that how you're providing love? Specifically, what is the vehicle that you are doing to provide, to make that impact? Who do you serve? If you're trying to serve everybody, you're serving nobody. Get really specific about, you are serving kids age 12 to 14. That's who you're hanging out with. You serve dogs only. Okay, so get specific. The last one, why are you the only? This one is important because there are so many organizations out there, and there is so much noise that your donors, your audience are focused on. So how can you stand out? So why are you the only one who can do the work that you are doing? Is it because you're in a geographical location and you're the only organization that does it within a 100-mile radius? Is it because you have specialized program managers who know how to do this really specific thing? Is it because you have horses that are trained to, work with kids who, whatever. Specifically, why are you the only? Okay. So, got a plan. You got to know where you're going. You got to know why you're doing it. Prioritize. Okay. So this is what's kind of the big thing that people think about. So I'm gonna walk through really quickly 3 different ways that you could think about prioritization, but this quote is freaking brilliant. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule. It is to schedule your priorities. So if you don't have your goals, if you don't have an annual plan, if you don't have a 90-day plan, like, then you're just going to be prioritizing your schedule. But if you're like, I am going to raise $100,000 this year, then you can prioritize the tasks that lead you to that goal. Or I am going to recruit 200 new volunteers. Okay, you can then prioritize going into the community, connecting with leaders so that you can find more volunteers. But if you don't know what that plan is, you can't prioritize the tasks that are going to get you to that plan. All right, so let's talk about the three big ways to think about prioritization. All right, so the first one is the Eisenhower matrix. I'm obsessed with this one because it's awesome. It's probably something you've seen. I feel like it's in like, I think I learned it in like college, but it's very simple. On, on one axis, you have important and not important. And on the other axis, you have urgent and not urgent. Okay. And so this matrix just tells you what to do. So if it's something that's urgent and it's something that's important, then you got to just do it. But if it's something that's not important, but it is urgent, delegate that, get it off your plate. And if it's not important and it's not urgent, don't do it. Don't waste your time. Okay. So
Rachel, I just want to jump into that. If anyone, for whatever reason, you can change your view of the screen in the top right. So if for whatever reason you lost the presentation or something, just someone messaged me in the chat and make sure folks knew they can adjust their view, because you definitely want to see the matrix here that Rachel's talking through.
Yes. So what does this look like if we put it into practice? Okay. So I actually did this exercise with a group. And so we wrote down like the 10 things that were like top of mind. Okay. We all have like those things that are taking up our brain space. So preparing the board agenda, sending out tax receipts, monthly bookkeeping, researching new policies, sending out the tax receipts. I think I have that on there twice. Okay, great. Email newsletters, taking photos for social media, designing new promo mugs. Okay, all things that you might do either on a daily or a weekly basis. So taking each one of those and saying, okay, preparing the board agenda. Well, we've got a board meeting coming up next week. I got to do that. And then sending out the tax receipts. Like usually it's automated, but maybe it's not. Making sure that people are getting what they need. Monthly bookkeeping. Yeah, that comes around. That is something you have to do. I mean, you could wait until the end of the year, but we all know that's a nightmare. Researching new policies. Okay, so that is under not urgent, but it is still important. So I'm going to schedule that for later in the month when I know that things are a little quieter and I have more brain space to think about policies. That's how I want to spend one of my summer days. Email newsletters. Yep, something that you need to do, but it's not something that has to happen right now. So as you can see, I have basically taken all of those tasks, I put them into these different buckets, and designing new promo mugs, not that important. and it's really not urgent. So we're going to take it off the list. Okay. So you see how this can very quickly. Now, every time I have a to-do list, do I do this matrix? No. But it's one of those things that you can kind of have in your brain, be like, okay, is this urgent? Is this important? And then decide where it needs to go.
I would also say, Rachel, that I hear a lot of people that like to say, don't be afraid to say no, or the power of no, which is really like nice. And we can all agree with that. But I think when it comes to actually deciding like, okay, where can I? This to me is how you actually identify where you can say no. And it's in this bottom right corner. And it makes it a really powerful way to just kind of give yourself that framework to say no to things.
Absolutely. And if you have your goals and you have that plan, and somebody come, if you have your plan, you have your 3 events for the year set, and somebody comes to you and is like, you know what, we should do a golf tournament. That is the moneymaker. Let's do a golf tournament. I saw the other organization, they killed it. It was really fun. They brought dogs. It was great. And you could be like, you know what? I appreciate your idea, but that doesn't align with the goals that we have set out over the next 12 months, the next quarter. But let's revisit it. So if you don't have your plan, if you aren't prioritizing, then you get into this habit of of saying yes to all these different things, which then keeps you just in the state of overwhelm. Yeah. But sometimes you are going to have to say yes to something. And so, Mitch, to your point, like, it's so important to be able to say, okay, this is not a priority that is a dumpster fire, and I need to make this happen right now. This is something that future Rachel can think about when future Rachel has the brain space to do that.
One question that came up from Dan in the chat said, I think my perpetual problem is that the urgent and important task list still feels too long when I separate it out, and it still feels overwhelming. Do you have any tips for that issue?
I think it goes back to the plan. Like, what is it? Like, what are your goals? So within the productive ED, this is the first thing that we work on, is coming up with your goals and coming up with a 90-day plan. And I give you 3 goals. You can have a max or minimum of 1, max of 3. Okay. Typically it's a program goal. Typically it's a fundraising goal, and then it's a choose your own adventure. But if you are trying to do too many things, then yeah, your to-do list is going to be a mile long. But if you get really clear and really specific about what you're doing, then it's going to be a lot easier to determine, like, okay, yep, this is urgent, because my goal I'm 20 people away from my goal of 200 volunteers. Well, I have 5 networking events this week. This is where I'm going to get them. Great. Also, oh my gosh, 5 networking events in 1 week. That would kill me. But you're able to prioritize that, I can put off doing my monthly bookkeeping because I've decided that my priority right now are volunteers. Okay. So this gets easier to do as you do it, as you practice. When I first learned this concept, I literally wrote like a grid and was like, okay, here's my to-do list. I do a pretty cool delegation workshop, which isn't out there right now, but I'm going to get it out there at some point, because if you are a leader of your organization, you're focused in these top 2 brackets, and really you're focused in, like, if it's urgent and it's important, then truly, are you the only one who can do it? And if you are, then how do you make sending out tax receipts even more just scalable and more efficient? That's getting your CRM to do it for you. It's, all the different steps that we can do to simplify the task. So Dan, I think I would say 1, get real clear on the goals. 2, take a look at everything that is on your list and how can you simplify it or make the task to get it done easier. Okay, I'm going to run through the next 2. They're very simple, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on them because this is the good one. All right, so deep work versus shallow work. You cannot be in deep work all the time. That is, I mean, if you can, like, kudos to you, that's a lot. But deep work versus shallow work. So really thinking about when do you need time to think? When can you kind of do some of those like admin tasks that don't require a ton of brain space? I really like to think about this as like, what can I do on a treadmill, like on a walk with a walking desk, and what do I need to sit down and do? I can write emails all day long on a walking desk, but if I'm thinking about like my communication strategy, then I need to be sitting down and focused. So yeah, so you'll get the slides for these, so I'll let you read through them, but just kind of thinking about how much of your day is shallow work and how much of your day is deep work, and make sure that you have a healthy mix. And then some days you just got to pick the top 3. Like, wake up, you got stuff to do. What is the top 3? Just go for it. Maybe write them on a Post-it note. That's where you focus. Okay, I'm going to dive into time blocking because this is actually where you save most of your time. Going back to productivity. So productivity is never an accident. It's always a result of planning, commitment, and focus effort. Okay. So time blocking is one of those ways that you can just save so much time and be so much more efficient with your day. So let's look real quick. If we look on the left-hand side, okay, so we've got somebody who is working on their annual plan. So that's their big project. But if you look, they're spending the first part of their day, they like head to the office at 7 a.m., they're looking at their emails. They then jump into an hour, 2 hours worth of meetings, then they look at their email again, then they look at social media, then they, kind of dabble in some annual planning work, then back looking at some social media, then they're in some more meetings. So as you can see, like, they're all over the place. If we're really looking at that, like that first column, that's a lot. Now, Mythbuster here. Context switching is the biggest time waster of anything that we do. Okay. What it means is you're shifting your attention from one thing to another. We often call this multitasking. Just want to let you guys know, no one is good at multitasking. No one. And if you're moving between tabs on your computer, software, answering phone calls, answering emails, you are going to be all over the place. Okay. So let me tell you why this is bad. According to Psychology Today and Harvard also says this, switching between tasks can rob you up to 40% of your productivity. 40%, that's like almost half, okay? It lowers your IQ by 10 points. You can. I don't know about you, but I want to keep all of my points. I want all of them. This is the one that terrifies me. You can lose up to 546 hours a year. That's over 2 hours a day because of context switching. So if you go from, checking your email to checking your social media to jumping into deep work, annual plan or planning your fundraiser, whatever it is, then sometimes it takes you almost like 20-ish minutes to settle into that next body of work. And so if you're doing that over and over and over again, then you're losing a lot of time in the day. Okay, so context switching, let's not do that. So if we look at time blocking again, starting off the day with annual planning, jump into, answer some emails, have some social media time, eat lunch. Food is important, taking care of ourselves, super important. Then the afternoon is full of some meetings and then emails and plan for the day. Okay. Now, how do we feel about time? Should I talk a little bit about calendar management real quick?
Yeah, and I think one thing that came up in the chat too, Rachel, was just like 3 hours of meetings seems unproductive too. Is there like an ideal length or how you break up meetings like that?
Yeah, so let me answer this in the next section because I definitely tackle that, but I think meetings are super important to dig into. So when we're thinking about our calendar, just gonna pause real quick. When we're thinking about our calendar, there's 3 layers, okay? If you were to start with a blank calendar, how would you set up your day? How would you think about how you're spending your time? So if, again, we're starting blank calendar, okay? You start with the non-negotiables, okay? This means picking your kids up for school, taking your dog for a walk, making dinner, picking up groceries, taking your grandma to physical therapy, like whatever it is, like what is a non-negotiable to you? This is gonna be different for you, for your coworker, for anyone within your organization. We all have different non-negotiables, okay? So what are yours? Think about that. If picking up your kids at 3:30 is a non-negotiable, then put that in your calendar and have that blocked out. Don't let anyone schedule a meeting over that. That is a non-negotiable. So you start there. And then you think about your energy blocks and your boundaries. Okay, so energy blocks are, when do I do my best work? I am freshest in the morning. That's when I need to do the deep work. That's when I need to focus on some of the big projects. So I don't have meetings before 11 or 12 p.m. Okay, 11 a.m., 12 p.m. If you know that that's when you do your best work, then don't schedule meetings. I also know that I need 1 to 2 days of no meetings because they just take a lot of energy out of me. So I just have a couple of days that I just don't do meetings. I do all of my meetings on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Rest of the week, I try really, really hard not to have them. When are you doing your admin tasks? You kind of need some of that shallow work, the busy work. Okay, schedule that in the afternoon. No working after 6 p.m., block that. You need a power nap, put that in the schedule. So what are your energy blocks? What are your boundaries? Thinking about what is going to make you a better, able to do better work, put those in. Because we all know that doing more, like less is more, not more is more. Meeting controls. Okay. When you set up your meetings, whether it's through Calendly or it's through your, through Gmail or Outlook, you can set some controls. Okay, so like if you go and click on your calendar and you're gonna like schedule a meeting, don't do an hour, do 30 minutes. Better yet, do 15 minutes. Like you can get a lot done in 15 minutes. It cuts out all the crap. You don't do any of the small talk and you just like get into it. And you might need 30 minutes to talk about something bigger, but really thinking about, okay, how am I using my time? And being really protecting your time. Go through and do an inventory of your recurring meetings. How many meetings do you have in a week? I did this with another group and on average, they had 9 hours of meetings a week. That is almost a third of their time, a quarter of their time. That's outrageous. Just sitting in meetings. Also, end meetings on time, have an agenda, know what you're talking about. Those are 3 very simple things that you can do that allow you to just protect your time, value other people's time, and get back to doing the work that is most important. So let me just double check here. I will pause right now. This is really the big picture of kind of the productive framework. You have your plan, prioritize. Okay. Then what is the plan? Now I'm blanking. This is concussion brain. I had a concussion earlier in the year and like I lose all of my, let's see, go back here. Here we go. Plan, prioritize, time block, and then evaluate. Okay. So let's go back here. Evaluate. This is the last thing that you want to do. What's working well? Do you like not having meetings in the morning, or do you find yourself that you'd rather have a couple meetings in the morning and do your deep work in the afternoon? Okay, switch that, reevaluate it. Systems break. This is also something that's really important to remember. Systems break, and they break at certain points when you have growth. So you might get into something that, some kind of routine that feels really good, and then you add a team member. You add a new system, and you have to reevaluate. Think about that solution, you test it, you repeat it, you do it all over. I wish I could say like, yes, you're gonna like put this in place, it's gonna work great, and it's gonna, you're gonna be able to have it forever. That is not the case. You're constantly evaluating the systems and the processes that you have, whether that's personal or organizational, whether that's operational or that's, your time management. Like you're always going to be thinking about how it could be improved, what's working, what's not working, because we don't want to do things that aren't working. So I do have one more. Oh, go ahead.
We had a question come up of just, especially for folks who might not be in charge of all these things, the best way to like move their organization in the direction of taking on more of these strategies.
Okay, so when you're setting boundaries, tell people what your boundaries are. If you have a manager or you are managing people, ask them, what are the boundaries? What are the energy blocks? What are the pieces that you need to be a better, more productive worker? Figure that out. Have a conversation. You can go to your boss and say, listen, I need one day where I don't have meetings because they really take a lot of energy out of me, but I am going to commit to, this 5-hour block is when I want to schedule all my meetings. Do you think that's something that we could do internally? Start with that conversation. I know sometimes we don't have control over everything. And so then, let me say this. We think oftentimes that we don't have control, but if someone's like, hey, I need to schedule a 7:30 appointment on Tuesday, and you're like, you know what? I'm not able to meet that day. Guess what? You find another time. You have to protect your time. You have to protect what's best for you. And I know that sounds like very, very black and white, very simple, but if you feel like you don't have control, I would encourage you to have a conversation with your manager and let them know, like, hey, here are some of the things that I think would allow me to work more efficiently. Maybe it's, working from home 3 days a week and only being in the office 2 days a week. Maybe, I hope given the last couple of years that our sector has can understand that flexibility and being willing to try new things can really improve the work that we're doing. But we also can't be afraid to ask for what we need. Because if you don't tell anyone that this is what you need, then it's probably not going to happen, and meetings are going to get scheduled.
Yeah.
So.
I also think for Megan, a lot of times if that's a hard conversation to have, just with power dynamics or whatever, being able to point to something external and say like, oh, I joined this great session, and like these are some of the things that came up, where it's not just like, it kind of makes it feel like it's not you, you're just like sharing something. And I think that can sometimes take the pressure off of one of those conversations, or, you know, the recap that comes out of this, being able to say like, hey, these ideas around like ending meetings on time or having an agenda, or also I feel strongly about it, like offering to take the lead on like, hey, I'd love to start like gathering agenda items for these, you know, or
Absolutely.
take the charge. Oh, I see. Group meeting.
Like boards and committees. So I think it goes, it's this, okay, so you might have to have board meetings in the evening or committee meetings in the evening, because that is when people are able to meet. But what you can do is you can make sure that, you know, everyone is showing up. They know exactly when the meeting is going to be. It's always going to be the second Tuesday at 5 p.m. at whatever location at the library. You know, making things consistent so that you can plan around it, or you can prepare for it. You know that Tuesdays are your meetings for committees. You just know that you're going to work late on Tuesdays, which means you come in later on Tuesday morning, or you come in later on Wednesday. But you know that, you know, this day is going to be when you're doing those late meetings. I know coordinating with outside people, with volunteers, we oftentimes bend over backwards to make it work for other people, but sometimes just, you know, perfect example, my mom is trying to plan a birthday for my dad, and there's 5 of us, we have 5 kids, and she has gone to every single one of us and said, can you send me your schedule? And I'm like, no, because my schedule is a little all over the place. So instead of going to every single person trying to figure out what works for them, just say, you know what, Dad's birthday is on the 24th. We're going to do it on the 25th. It's going to be from 1 to 3 p.m. Would love to see you there. If you can't make it, see you next year. Okay, that's a little cutthroat, but plan the meeting. Whoever can attend, get it on a regular schedule, and then people can continue to prepare for it. They might not make it every time, but they can make it as often as possible. So.
Rachel, I think it would be helpful to, in the last few minutes we have here, just to touch on, you know, a lot of this framework is around the work that we're doing and maybe sharing with the team. But I think it'd be helpful to think about delegating, planning and delegating around technology too, and how people are taking advantage of what can be automated. So I'd just love to hear you talk a little bit about how you advise folks in your group on that front.
Yeah, so I think automation and I think technology is one of the coolest advancements, even from when I was an executive director to where I am now. I think so much change and improvement and goodness has come over the last couple of years. It can also be incredibly overwhelming. So the first thing that I would suggest is get very clear, like, okay, so you have your plan, right? But what is going to make the greatest impact? So is getting a CRM set up, you're allowing you to take, you know, getting tax receipts out, getting automated thank you notes. Let's see, you know, just kind of all the different pieces that a CRM can offer. Get really clear on what tasks they're going to reduce, they're going to minimize, and then if you have a team, then talk about, okay, who owns this system? Who's going to get really good at it? And then who is going to help everyone else understand how they need to use it for their role. But I feel like each person needs to own a technology, a piece of software. Like, and if you're in a small shop, it might mean for a while that you own all of it. Like right now in my business and small shop, I own all the technology, but I've just added a couple new team members. And so I'm starting to pass that off. So my social media, that is passed to my team. We have a new software that we're using. They're owning it. They tell me what they need from me, but they're owning it. So especially as a leader, like you need to be in it. You need to be able to use it and understand it, but it doesn't mean you have to own it and know every single piece around it. Also, as you go through Camp Impact, like you are going to learn so much cool stuff, but what is going to be most important and what is going to create the most impact for your organization? Do you need to add volunteer software if you only have, if you don't really have capacity to add volunteers right now? Maybe not. But adding, event software because you host an event every single month, now that's a bigger priority. That is going to free up more time. So instead of, having that shiny object syndrome, which I feel like I'm going to go through these the next couple of weeks and be like, ooh, I need that. Ooh, I want that. Being really clear on, okay, this one thing is going to move my organization the furthest, the fastest, the most effective way. And then once you stabilize that, once you've got it, then you can optimize it and then you can expand and add something new. So, yeah.
And there was another question that came up in the chat, and I know we only have a few minutes left, but I think this is important. I'm sure you've had addressed this within your group that you work with, but someone mentioned, what are your thoughts on the double standards that people of color experience in setting boundaries and prioritizing and saying no compared to their white counterparts in the workforce? Are there ways we can overcome this?
So I think that a conversation that's not happening is just the additional labor that does happen with people of color who are in our organizations, and the additional just thoughts they have to go through to reframe, change how they phrase a question, how they show up. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for growth within nonprofit leadership. I think that it's having conversations saying, how can I better support you? How can I, and this is as a leader, how can I make sure that you feel like you are being supported? What are some boundaries that I am missing? I saw like I think it was a meme or something, or like a post on social media, there are boundaries that, as a white woman with a certain level of privilege, that I am not going to know or recognize are needed, or where a person of color might be feeling, feeling like they don't have that that ability to stand up and say, hey, like this isn't working for me. And I need to, our white counterpart, white leadership needs to ask these questions. We need to stand up and say, I think we need to have a bigger conversation about what's going to work for all of us and allow for a more inclusive environment. And just be more open to change, like be flexible. And I'm speaking to white leaders here. I am not a person of color. I haven't probably haven't experienced that pushback or that type of, really needing to, I haven't experienced that double standard in the same way. What am I missing here, Mitch?
No, I mean, and they even mentioned like this might be, it's a big topic to take on in a few minutes here, but I think what you highlighted is a call to white folks in organization, especially in leadership, to make the space to have those one-on-one conversations is, I think, the best CTA we can offer in a short period of time, because so often people are like, oh, well, you should do this, this, and this. And it's like, hey, I already said, I'm already having too much like work put on my plate, and we're putting more requirements on people, like how to navigate a white space. And I think the way you answered the question is like helpful. And I also think, like they said, we need to have more of that conversation in the future too, to more specifically dig in on resources and get more voices around that too. We are disobeying one of your rules, which was to end on time. A lot to cover. I appreciate everyone joining. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing all this stuff. A few people asked if these things will be available afterwards. Yes, we will. The recording will be available, so you can share that with team members, friends, whoever, and then we'll also make sure to get the actual presentation info available to people. So thank you for joining. Be sure and check out the rest of the stuff coming up on Pond in the next few weeks, and we will be seeing you all very soon.
Bye.
Bye.
You're allowing you to take, getting tax receipts out, getting automated thank you notes. Let's see, just kind of all the different pieces that a CRM can offer. Get really clear on what tasks they're going to reduce, they're going to minimize, and then if you have a team, then talk about, okay, who owns this system? Who's going to get really good at it? And then who is going to help everyone else understand how they need to use it for their role? But I feel like each person needs to own a technology, a piece of software. And if you're in a small shop, it might mean for a while that you own all of it. Like right now in my business in small shop, I own all the technology, but I've just added a couple new team members. And so I'm starting to pass that off. So my social media, that is passed to my team. We have a new software that we're using. They're owning it. They tell me what they need from me, but they're owning it. So especially as a leader, like you need to be in it. You need to be able to use it and understand it, but it doesn't mean you have to own it and know every single piece around it. Also, as you go through Camp Impact, like you are going to learn so much cool stuff, but what is going to be most important and what is going to create the most impact for your organization? Do you need to add volunteer software if you only have, if you don't really have capacity to add volunteers right now? Maybe not. But adding, event software because you host an event every single month, now that's a bigger priority. That is going to free up more time. So instead of, having that shiny object syndrome, which I feel like I'm going to go through these the next couple of weeks and be like, ooh, I need that. Ooh, I want that. Being really clear on, okay, this one thing is going to move my organization the furthest, the fastest, the most effective way. And then once you stabilize that, once you've got it, then you can optimize it and then you can expand and add something new. So, yeah.
And there was another question that came up in the chat, and I know we only have a few minutes left, but I think this is important. I'm sure you've had addressed this within your group that you work with, but someone mentioned, what are your thoughts on the double standards that people of color experience in setting boundaries and prioritizing and saying no compared to their white counterparts in the workforce? Are there ways we can overcome this?
So I think that the I think a conversation that's not happening is the just the additional labor that does happen with people of color who are in our organizations, and the additional just thoughts they have to go through to frame, reframe, change how they phrase a question, how they show up. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity for growth within nonprofit leadership. I think that it's having conversations saying, how can I better support you? How can I, and this is as a leader, how can I make sure that you feel like you are being supported? What are some boundaries that I am missing? I saw like I think it was a meme or something, or like a post on social media. There are boundaries that, as a white woman with a certain level of privilege, that I am not going to know or recognize are needed, or where a person of color might be feeling feeling like they don't have that that ability to stand up and say, hey, like, this isn't working for me. And I need to, our white counterpart, white leadership needs to ask these questions. We need to stand up and say, I think we need to have a bigger conversation about what's going to work for all of us and allow for a more inclusive environment. And just be more open to change, like, be flexible. And I'm speaking to white leaders here. I am not a person of color. I haven't, probably haven't experienced that pushback or that type of, really needing to, I haven't experienced that double standard in the same way. What am I missing here, Mitch?
No, and they even mentioned like this might be, it's a big topic to take on in a few minutes here, but I think what you highlighted is a call to white folks in organization, especially in leadership, to make the space to have those one-on-one conversations is, I think, the best CTA we can offer in a short period of time, because so often people are like, oh, well, you should do this, this, and this. And it's like, hey, I already said I'm already having too much like work put on my plate, and we're putting more requirements on people, like how to navigate a white space. And I think the way you answered the question is like helpful. And I also think, like they said, we need to have more of that conversation in the future too, to more specifically dig in on resources and get more voices around that too. We are disobeying one of your rules, which was to end on time. A lot to cover. I appreciate everyone joining. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing all this stuff. A few people asked if these things will be available afterwards. Yes, we will. The recording will be available, so you can share that with team members, friends, whoever, and then we'll also make sure to get the actual presentation info available to people. So thank you for joining. Be sure and check out the rest of the stuff coming up on PON in the next few weeks, and we will be seeing you all very soon.
Bye.
Bye.